The 2020 Judicial Candidates Forums are made possible by a partnership between UNC-TV and the North Carolina Bar Association. Tricia Shields and April Wood hope to fill one of those seats, seat 4. They are here in our studio. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. Coin flip before we begin taping the show gives Judge April Wood the first question, which is, tell us about your qualifications, your experiences. Why do you want to go to the Court of Appeals?
So thank you for letting me be here with you today, Kelly. I am Judge April Wood. I'm a district court judge in North Carolina. I've had the honor and privilege of serving as a district court judge for almost 18 years since I was first elected in 2002. And one of the reasons why I am running for the North Carolina Court of Appeals is because historically most of the people that have run for the Court of Appeals have had an appellate practice, and their decisions have reflected that, and very few trial judges have run for the Court of Appeals. In fact, of the 15 judges currently on the Court of Appeals, only one of them has ever been a district court judge, and only 3 of them have any prior trial judicial experience at all. And I believe that is a serious disservice to the citizens of North Carolina, and that's why I'm seeking to take my 18 years of judicial experience to the Court of Appeals for the benefit of all of North Carolina.
Tricia Shields, your experience, what brings you into this race for that seat?
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you to the Bar Association for having this forum today. I am a 35-year trial and appellate lawyer, and that is the experience that I bring to the Court of Appeals. After graduating from law school in 1985, I began my career as law clerk to Chief Judge Hedrick at the Court of Appeals. And because Judge Hedrick was blind, I spent all day, every day in his office with him, reviewing the records and the briefs and researching the law and helping him to draft his opinions. And I learned a great deal in that job. I learned how important it is to have experienced judges, and I learned how important judicial independence is. From that job, I then went into private practice, and in the 33 years since then, I have represented North Carolinians at every level of our courts, at our district and superior courts, as well as front of our Court of Appeals and Supreme Court, and as well as the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. I believe that that mixture of trial and appellate experience is very important in a Court of Appeals judge. I personally have appeared in 50 appeals, roughly 50 appeals at the appellate level, and in addition to that, because of my deep experience with appellate work, I am often retained by attorneys to assist with them on their appeals.
How does your experience over those 30-plus years, how will that affect your decision-making and how you review court cases as a Court of Appeals member?
What I know from that experience is how important each case is to the parties that are involved. I am always very aware that individual people are deeply affected by the outcome of the case. And so that's what my trial experience brings. What my experience with the Court of Appeals brings is the appreciation for the academic side of those cases, the way that the cases are decided consistent with precedent, and the way that they add to the developing body of case law. So I have both that practical experience and that academic experience with the law.
Your experience as a judge is different than a trial attorney facing the judge. How does it affect, or would it affect, your decision-making and how you review cases as an appellate judge?
So as a district court judge, I make the decisions every single day based on the evidence that's presented in my courtroom, and I make the decisions about what law is admissible. So I have 18 years of experience of applying the law to the cases that are in front of me, and that, of course, is what the Court of Appeals judge will do. But as a district court judge, I also bring a unique perspective that I understand how important the decisions are that are made at the Court of Appeals to children and family, because you may not be aware, but district court has exclusive jurisdiction over all family law matters. So anything that touches on children and family is generally tried in the district court, and those decisions can have the most long-lasting consequences for children and families. And at the Court of Appeals, while they're deciding the academic part of it, which is of course very important, there are people sitting there waiting for their decisions to come down. And I can speak from experience. I recently had a case that was heard in my court in April of 2018. The court finally, the case went to the Court of Appeals. The court heard it at the Court of Appeals in April of 2019, but it took until February of 2020 for that decision to be handed down. And while the Court of Appeals was waiting to issue their decision, we had the children and parents in the court that just weren't having any resolution to their case. And as a matter of fact, one of the parents, because the Court of Appeals had issued a stay, wasn't getting any time with the children. And the fact of the matter is that is a significant period of time, almost 2 years of missed birthdays and Christmas and just missed time that the children had with that parent. And so it's the daily impact of the decisions that I believe are not fully recognized by the people at the Court of Appeals who don't have any judicial experience, particularly in the district court.
Next question to you. Both of you use words like impartial, but it's also a partisan race, so there's a Republican and a Democrat in this race. How do you balance impartiality with what people perceive to be a party affiliation, which means if you're a Republican, you're conservative, and if you're Democrat, you're a progressive or a liberal?
So I had the privilege or experience, I guess you could say, of having the first nonpartisan election in 2002. So I have run in a partisan election and nonpartisan election. So when I was first elected in 2002, the ballot did not designate Republican or Democrat. However, because it was new to the parties themselves, they basically didn't know how to handle those cases and left us to try to educate the voters on our own. At the end of the day, the reality, though, is that I take an oath that I am going to uphold the Constitution. I'm going to uphold the Constitution of the United States and North Carolina, and I am going to follow the law. I'm going to apply the law as it's written. And I have an 18-year track record of being fair and impartial and not letting politics play in my decision making. And so, yes, my political designation as a Republican does, of course, lead people to believe that I am very conservative, and I am, and that is my ideology. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be fair and impartial. I'm going to apply the law as it is written. I'm not going to be an activist judge. And for the last 18 years, I've been able to demonstrate that.
What does it mean to have a Democratic appellate court judge?
In my opinion, it is an irrelevant designation for the purposes of a Court of Appeals judge. The legislature is seen to make these races partisan, and so that's the situation that we have. But it is essentially, actually, fundamentally a nonpartisan position. In my opinion, an independent judiciary is the cornerstone of democracy. And for that reason, you will not see me when I'm campaigning saying, even though I am a Democrat, but that does not mean that I will be a Democratic judge. My hope, and what I will be, is a judge that is fair and impartial to everyone, regardless of their religion, their race, their background, their wealth, or their political party. That's what the voters have a right to expect from their judges. And I believe that using phrases like conservative and progressive are misleading to the public, because it is an absolutely nonpartisan judgeship. And for that reason, I would ask voters to look to my endorsements. If you see on my website, shieldsforjudge.com, you will see a number of endorsements. And two of those endorsements I'm particularly proud of, from the North Carolina Advocates for Justice, which is the plaintiff's bar, from the North Carolina Association of Defense Attorneys. That's the defense bar. So these are lawyers that are on the other side of cases every day. And those lawyers rarely disagree on anything, but they agree that I am the appropriate choice for seat 4 on the North Carolina Court of Appeals.
Ms. Wood, final question to you. About 2 minutes left for the entire interview. COVID-19, this coronavirus pandemic, how do you see it affecting the courts by the time you would take the bench if elected?
Well, at this point, our courts have basically been shut down, except for cases that affect due process or affect the lives of children and families, because in juvenile court, we're still moving along because children can't afford to have their cases not heard. And so, but as far as the criminal aspect of it and the other civil aspect of it, those cases are still lingering and pending. And so I think there will be a significant period of time at the Court of Appeals where there won't be a whole lot of appeals coming out of the trial courts, because the trial courts will still be trying to catch up from the current shutdown.
last word to you. I'll ask you, where do you see activity going for the Court of Appeals if you have a crystal ball compared to when you were clerking? So many cases are going there, it seems.
That's right, and so many cases are. The number of judges have increased over the years for that reason. I think the Court of Appeals will still be busy. I agree that there will be a bit of a bottleneck for a while the trial courts catch up, but then after that, the Court of Appeals will be very, very busy. I will say the Court of Appeals has been performing its function during COVID-19. In fact, they're doing their oral arguments online, and they're live streaming them, and that's one of the things that I hope that we carry forward into the future. I think that adds to the transparency of the courts to enable everybody to see what actually goes on there at the Court of Appeals. So I hope that that's one positive lesson that we take from everything that we've been through in the past 6 months.
Well, Tricia Shields, thank you for being here. April Wood, thank you for making the drive to RTP to be in our studios tonight. Thank you so much.